And I think that's what people crave when everything is fake now. Everything is fake. Not only is everything fake, but we've completely sensory deprived like 4 of our 5 senses.
Pros and cons.
Welcome to Pros and Cons, Engagement Unplugged. I'm Laura Smith.
And I'm Brian Rowley.
Marketers have never had more ways to communicate with customers. Between email, text messages, social media, AI content, and new automated platforms every day, we're communicating constantly. But are customers actually feeling more connected? Today, we're talking about something that almost feels counterintuitive in an AI-driven world. Slowing down enough to make interactions feel personal again. Sometimes the things that leave the biggest impression are the ones that simply show someone they mattered enough to receive a little extra attention.
Before we bring in today's guest, let's talk about something every marketer and every consumer can relate to. Every day, we are constantly flooded with messages competing for our attention. So let's be honest for a second. What's, Laura, the first thing you instinctively ignore or delete when it comes to email?
Well, I'm going to say from a marketing perspective, the first thing I'm deleting are those LinkedIn sales messages.
Yeah.
Those are, they scream to me, they're selling me something. And really it's, I because of that, I've so much more spent time filtering who I'm accepting. Because if I feel like they're just going to come up with, they want to connect with me, but really they want to just sell me something. So that is definitely something that I just see in my inbox, and it's very rare I respond to them.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say the other thing though, and this is terrible because this is what we do every day for work, but marketing emails as well. I'm just like, not today. Like there's too much stuff going on that's just not going to get my attention.
I would agree with that in the sense that, like, in my personal email, I go through, you wake up to, 60 emails, right? So I definitely go through and weed through a good amount of them. But the ones that I'm like, it's timely, like I actually need to buy something that they sell, I'll save those ones. So it's not like I'm just going like full delete, but I would say 70% of them I'm deleting right away. But I am keeping the ones that are relevant for me in that time.
Yeah, I can always tell when Joe's been out shopping because Joe will come in and he'll be, I'll all of a sudden get this flu of marketing emails. And I was like, did you use my email address? Like, why not your own? Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't even understand.
But the other thing I always delete, and I think it's because there's so many robocalling, but are voicemails. Like people don't leave me voicemails.
Who gets voicemails? I
Yeah,
mean,
you leave me voicemails sometimes, and I have to listen.
You shouldn't ignore mine.
I have to listen to those ones. But the other ones, I feel like it's like, don't leave me a message. Text me. I mean, now you can read your messages too, so it's easier to filter them out. But yeah, like voicemails, my parents still leave me voicemails, but I'm training them to just text. It's much easier because I will respond to those personal texts.
Actually, really, it's interesting because unsolicited outreach for me is just something that it just raises all sorts of flags, and I don't respond to a lot of it just because, to your point, there's so much of it. But I guess on the flip side of that, is there anything that you actually almost always open?
I mean, an email from a person that I have a relationship with, or I recognize the name.
Okay.
I don't know. It's hard. But they're not selling me something normally. There's a relationship there. So I guess I think about my personal email. I'm not talking about work. Work, I have obviously look at every email. But I think I want to say it's almost like an authentic one-to-one email. You read those, and maybe because I have a kid in sports, I have a kid in school. I have I don't know. Some people in my network may be reaching out that way versus LinkedIn. So. Yeah, I would say that, but it feels very marketing-esque. It just feels like, no, I'm going to pay attention when I recognize a name and they're communicating with me.
Yeah, that's fair.
What about you?
I mean, I respond to emails. Emails are the things that I open. I mean, a lot of the other things that you get, it becomes noise in this world, like that we've got so much going on that, I guess if someone's really creative in the way that they approach something, then I'll pay attention to that. But there's very little, to be honest with you, that really is something that I'm like, I'll make a minute and I'll see what this is all about. But I do respond to emails For sure.
That was interesting because it's timely that I just got an email yesterday that it was a person's name I did not recognize. It was to my work email, but it was very personalized and relevant coming out of Infocom that I'm like, wait a minute, did I meet this person? Because we met a lot of people, and a lot of people like got my information. And so, and people I gave my information to, proactively. So it was something that I'm like, oh, this is very creative. Like he did a really good job of catching my attention, but delete because he's trying to sell me something I don't need. So, but it caught my attention.
I was going to say, kudos for catching the attention, right? Because out of everything, you obviously get a ton of email. With your role here within BrightSign, there's constantly people that want just 5 minutes of your time. So the fact that he was able to actually at least get your attention is interesting.
And I could have told him that as a marketer, but I didn't. Move on to the next one. Too busy over here. But anyway, enough about us. Let's dive in. So our guest today has spent more than 2 decades thinking about how people communicate. He started his career in digital messaging, watching businesses embrace text messaging, email, and automation as new ways to connect with customers. But over time, he noticed that as communication became faster, it often became less meaningful. Today, he helps organizations rethink customer relationships by bringing a human touch back into their marketing. Please welcome David Wachs, founder and CEO of Handwrytten. Welcome, David.
Hey, David.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And it was refreshing to hear a different intro than the one I typically provide people. So thank you so much.
We're full of surprises, David. Just wait.
But David, did I pronounce your last name right? I forgot to ask you.
You did.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. I used AI to help me with that, because that's what AI can do.
That's what AI is, just absolutely bonkers these days. I'll be the first to admit.
So welcome. So you've spent your career helping businesses communicate from text messaging to handwritten notes. Mm-hmm. What made you believe marketers needed to do something different?
So over 2 decades, in 22 years ago, in 2004, I started a text messaging company, and we actually got pretty big. This was before the iPhone. And we were sending 1 million texts a day just for like one brand, like Abercrombie and Fitch. And it was all opt-in, it wasn't spam. But I realized while we were sending 1 million texts a day, everybody felt like they were getting 1 million texts a day. And it was just noise. It did work. Tropical Smoothie had lines out the door every time we sent a blast for them. But I just realized, that this is going to hit a saturation point. So before it did, I sold that company. And when I sold the company, I wanted to thank my employees and my customers for sticking with me through all those tough years. And I wanted to do something personal, so I sat down with pen and paper and I wrote them handwritten notes. And after about number 8, my hand cramped. All the stereotypical stuff. My hand cramped. I ran out of stamps. I screwed up too many notes, so I didn't have any stationery left. And I really liked my stationery. I bought it from moo.com. I was very proud of it. But all that kind of made me realize there has to be a better way. And I wanted to send handwritten notes. So I figured if I, at the time, the 30-something kid, wanted to get through a different medium, other people probably did too. And that was the extent of my market research. So I got a tremendous response from the notes I sent employees and clients. A lot of the clients called me back thanking me. And I realized, this could be a thing if we could automate handwritten notes and make it as easy or easier than sending an email. But now that I actually have a company on it, we have done the research and we've done it twice now. We did it once, I believe during, it was 2003, and then we did it again in 2023, and we did it again 2025, a survey of 2,000 consumers. And we asked them how they like to interact with brands, and some pretty open-ended questions like what forms of communication feel personal and which ones are annoying, etc. And the number one most personal form of communication is actually phone calls. But phone calls also, to your point, runs the risk of feeling the most annoying, of being the most annoying, because phone calls come at a time that's convenient to the caller, not the callee. So, but the number 2, kind of on my hunch, was handwritten notes. They're very personal, and they do not run the risk of being annoying. So if you're trying to walk that line, it's a great thing. And then also they have the sticking power of after, when you get a handwritten note, not only do they get read, but they get kept, they get put on display. So, that's kind of why I did it. I just kind of, for better or worse, I started the business on a hunch. I did zero market research. It was just off what I thought would be useful. At the time, when I thought of the business, there were no competitors, but I had a 2-year earnout with the company that bought us, so I couldn't do anything for 2 years. And in that time, a company sprouted up. So I thought, well, at least there's some. It's kind of good to have competitors because at least other people think it's a good idea too. That company has since gone out of business, but there's others in this space. So it's matured into an ecosystem of a half dozen companies doing what we do now.
Yeah, I would say when we first had this conversation come up, and I think I talked to you about this when we were sort of doing our prep, when we first had it like handwritten, my initial reaction to it was, really? And today, like, we're still doing handwritten? Because I thought immediately my head sort of went to the space of we're all so busy. And is this really an effective way for us to get that communication out? But I think it also speaks volumes to the approach of I've taken the time to think enough to, rather than just, quickly shoot an email to you, to actually do something that actually means something. And to your point, is that personalization side to things. I think it makes a lot of sense. It really does.
Well, it's not for everything. Like after, you don't want to send your shipping alerts via handwritten note because it'll get there way after the shipment itself. But, when I ran my last company and then sold it to this marketing firm, I became the head of messaging, basically. And I was deep on this thought of the preference center and a multi-channel messaging strategy, which everybody should do, obviously. And handwritten notes, I truly think, should be one of the many forms of communication you use, but it needs to be in there if you're trying to cultivate deeper relationships with your customers. So is it for everything? Absolutely not. We're typically talking 4 touch points a year. You don't want to overdo it and you don't want to underdo it, no more, but 4 touch points a year is kind of golden. And, you say personalized. I think what it shows is personal attention. Everybody these days has tons of personalization. Every website you log into is personal. Every email you get is personalized. What you don't have is personal attention because everything just is mass personalized. So what a handwritten note does, whether it's real or, for lack of a better term, phony by us, is it creates that impression that you're doing something and spending your brain power thinking of one person. And that doesn't have to be a handwritten note. That could be one of those video emails where you record a message and say, hey, Brian, I was thinking about you. Or it could be picking up the phone or showing up in person or having an event. There's a lot of ways to create that personal attention, but that's what people crave. It's like when you walk into a meeting and you take your cell phone and you place it face down on the table, you're saying, whoops, as I dropped the cell phone on my laptop, you're saying that, that time is yours. And that's, a handwritten note typically takes 5 minutes to write or 4 to 5 minutes to write. That 4 to 5 minutes, I'm thinking about you and only you, because if I try to do something else, I'm going to screw up the note. And I think that's what people crave when everything is fake now. Everything is fake. Not only is everything fake, but we've completely sensory deprived like 4 of our 5 senses. All we care about is sight. We have no photo albums. We have no record collections. Everything is digital. So when you receive something in the mail and you can feel it, it does seem to make a difference.
And one thing is, because obviously, and some people may not know really how handwritten works, but obviously there is this digital and this technology side of it, right? It's not just, you're not just mailing out cardstock and making people write. So I think there's this, right? There's this connection to, in its digital world, human connection can still exist, right? And how do you build that? And so maybe you could talk a little bit about like how, when you thought about like how to make people's lives easier, like in a B2B environment, for instance, and or B2C, I guess, but someone's trying to thank somebody, but they don't have the materials to do it. So like how do you think about combining those two worlds of digital and
yeah.
print,
And when I tell people what we do, I mean, if they don't already have the inkling of what we do, their immediate impression is yuck, gross, barf, fake handwritten
That
notes.
wasn't my
Because
reaction. I promise you that. It was just
no, but it's, look, I'm with you. I mean, God, my Instagram, that's the people who like it, put the little heart on it, but then the people who don't like it write all sorts of fun things in the comments. So yeah, what we do is we take your intent, your personal intent, and we automate the logistics behind it. And we do that through a fleet of 200 plus robots that we built in our facility in Tempe, Arizona. They all hold real pens and write your note out. We then stuff it in an envelope, write out the envelope, stamp it, and mail it all within 2 business days. And we can include gift cards, and we're starting to mail cookies with it now. So little gifts can go with those handwritten notes. Why robots and not people? So if you were to travel back in time to the 1960s and you wrote to the head of TWA Airlines or Pan Am or something, complaining or praising, you would get a note back signed by the CEO of that airline, but I'm willing to bet you it wasn't actually signed by them. It was probably signed by their secretary. Or if you donate to a major cause that handwritten's not involved in, you might get a handwritten note back, but I guarantee you that handwritten note was written by a fleet of college students working for pizza in a big room. So what I think is what we do using robotics is more consistent, not meaning every note looks the same. It absolutely doesn't, but at least it's in the style the brand wants or the nonprofit wants. It's much, much less risky, meaning there's not going to be any pizza drippings on that note. Every word is going to be spelled the right way. It's not going to be super messy. And you can actually record what every note says for compliance purposes. It's going to be safer or faster, and it's going to be less error prone in another way, which is misstuffing. When we started the company, we'd write the note, write the envelope, stuff them together, off it goes, and that would be a person job doing that. Now we're at a point scale wise where that's impossible, which is a good thing, because that hand stuffing has been replaced by an exacting process of robots that stuff the envelope for you and make sure that every note is in the right envelope. We actually even now measure the thickness of that envelope to know if there's been 2 cards stuffed in, which is, you're talking about a couple parts of a millimeter thickness different, but we had an issue where 2 cards got misstuffed in an envelope. So now we do that too. So we think automating it is the best way for brands and nonprofits to keep that impression, because if you don't automate it, you don't do it. Plain and simple. You want to send, you're a luxury brand and you've got thousands of customers. How are you supposed to sit down and send thousands of notes to your thousands or tens of thousands of customers? What you might do, like a perfume brand did in a European perfume brand, they had their store clerks do it. But guess what? If you walk into that store and you say, how many of those notes did you actually write out? They'll say none, because I'm too busy trying to do my merchandising and dealing with clients and all the rest. So the only way to ensure it gets done and that your contacts get the recognition they deserve is through an automation system like ours. Long answer to a short question, but that's
I think the part to that that's really interesting though is like, why does it even matter? Like whether it's robots doing it or someone doing it. I mean, I think the point of it is, again, someone made a conscious decision to make an effort. Correct. That the outreach was important. It's kind of like we get into this conversation all the time around AI driven content or creative or any of that stuff. And it's like, why does it matter? Like as long as it feels authentic and real, then why do we care where it originated from? And I think to your point, no one for all these years for these major brands or for anybody has been sitting there actually writing those things out. Someone on the team has been doing it. And yes, there's robots now that are doing it for more efficiency and for a lot of different reasons. But, people used to build cars. Now there's robots building cars. It's the same type of concept. I don't think it matters. I think the point of this is the company exists to be able to create that touch point that actually means something to an end user. And I think that's the part that's actually really valuable.
And it's also, quite frankly, balancing budget. And, you might be able to accomplish the same thing if you send somebody one of those cards. I think we talked about this on our prep call, one of those cards that you open up and there's a video screen in it. But, those, and then you open up the card and you watch a video or don't watch the video. But that video screen is very expensive. I'm willing to bet it's a lot more than a $2 card in the mail. So you can kind of create the same impression at a much lower price point by doing something simple. And everybody always thinks they need to do the craziest whiz bang thing, but sometimes it might be a clearer message if you just have somebody sit down and write it or have a robot sit down and write it. When I got one of those video cards, I just thought, man, must be very expensive. So whatever this brand is trying to sell me must make huge margin. And then I also, because I'm a geek, I build robots for a living. I wanted to know how the dang thing worked, and I wanted to just cut it open and see all the, so it's just, I think everybody's always searching for the craziest way to get in front of somebody, but sometimes it's a very simple, just go the old fashioned route, have them, send them a handwritten note.
And do you think that with the world that we live in with AI, do you think that people actually are craving more of this human connection and finding it more valuable just because it's something different and unexpected, and people do miss the human connection? So do you feel like that, those two things kind of working together?
Absolutely. I think this is, yes, AI has accelerated it, but it's been here for a long time. During COVID, we work with a flat pack furniture company that mails furniture. And when you call into their customer service line, afterwards you get a handwritten note saying, we're so glad we were able to resolve your concern, or, whatever. People would call in crying. Now, saying it was so nice to get that handwritten note from you, crying. I think a lot of that is COVID. People were so isolated, they thought any sort of outreach was just, but I think that just kind of highlights, there is an innate loneliness or an innate need for outreach. You're not going to cry over it unless you're in the middle of a pandemic. But there is that need there, and it's just magnified by a pandemic. We have a piano tuner. We work with businesses. We do a lot with veterinarian practices and nonprofits and e-com brands and all the rest. But we have a very small piano tuner in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. After tuning your piano, he doesn't have to be in your home for a year, but he does send you a handwritten note thanking for the opportunity to be in your home. When he returns to your home a year later, that handwritten note is often standing up on the piano. So not only was it open and read, but it was put on display for a year on the most prized possession in the home, on a space typically reserved for family photos and graduation announcements. Clearly people are craving this type of communication. They wouldn't do that otherwise. And that space, you're not you can't buy that space. So, but then, thanks to AI, the amount of email spam I get has just probably quadrupled, and then you add in all these other texts, like these cold email platforms that are, they try to justify it, but it's a spam platform. So all these systems that are out there trying to send you an email, and then not only if you don't respond, they send you another one and another one, right? So it just compounds. I think people have really gotten callous to that, and they're looking to communicate in deeper ways and get away from the noise a bit.
But admittedly, you actually acknowledge that handwritten communication isn't the answer to sort of every marketing challenge that's out there, right? So where does it have its biggest impact? And quite honestly, where isn't it the right solution?
Yeah, I think when you look at your sales dashboard at your company, it's all the whiz bang razzle dazzle goes into acquiring a new client. But what people don't see is the silent killer of their business is their retention rate and the leaky bucket of that business and the second and third sale drop off. So they're out there prospecting, but what's really happening is their clients that they do have are falling through the bottom. I would say handwritten notes are great for keeping those clients. They're not as great on the prospecting side, but there's a lot of tools on the prospecting side. So I would say, use handwritten notes to retain your existing business. We are a thank you business, thank you and birthday cards and holiday cards. But, our business is to show appreciation that Laura Smith and Brian took their time to choose this product or service or whatever, or nonprofit out of all the others. They chose us, and you're thanking them. Just that act of a genuine thank you is a huge surprise. There is a survey of nonprofits, this impact research survey, and people were asked why they don't redonate to a nonprofit. The redonation rate is sub 50%. And the number one reason people don't redonate to a nonprofit is they say they weren't thanked. I think that's not true. I think everybody's thanked. You receive an email right away saying thank you. People don't feel thanked. And when you don't feel thanked, you're not thanked. So handwritten is a great way to make people feel or handwritten notes, I should say, are a great way for, to help make people feel thanked. And then so that's number one. We do birthday cards if possible, if you have their birth date. Holiday cards are a great touch point, although I will say they kind of fall into the noise of everybody else's holiday card. So you might, if you want to do that, do a Thanksgiving card, do a Valentine's Day card. There's ways around it, but that is a noisy time of year. And then we say maybe one other thing. So that could be an offer, that could be an invitation. Those are kind of the big ones. So like for car dealerships, it's a free oil change or time to come in and trade in or trade up your car. There are other things you can do with that additional touch point, but handwritten notes are best when you know your client, not for blind outreach. It's also not the cheapest form of communication. I mean, stamps and postcards and handwritten notes are expensive. So it's best when you have that existing relationship you're trying to retain.
Only expensive it doesn't return, right? Because think about the amount of time that people spend on email platforms and creating and hiring people to do those types of things. So it's not that that's not without expense as well. I think to your point earlier in the conversation, it is a touch point. It is one way to be able to do it. It's not the end all be all and wouldn't be the only way that you would approach a customer, but it is one effective tool to be able to use.
I mean, think about all the whining and dining that some sales teams are doing, and so I think that's not to say they won't still do that, but this is just another, because that is in person and you're able to engage and have relationships and conversations. Well, if you're on that level and that you're having that 2 times a year, then those cards are going to even you continue to foster that relationship. So it feels like it's just part of that inexpensive as compared to something like a dinner or a ball game in a suite or whatever that may be. But one thing you said when we talked that really stuck with us was the least used inbox is the mailbox at the end of the driveway. Yeah. And we really found that to be I paused, because it really is why is physical communication standing out so much more today than ever before? I don't want to get with the mail because I don't want to have to, even though I don't get that much mail, but whatever I do get, it's usually not fun or exciting.
It's junk.
But
junk.
It's junk. It is. And so it's just, it's such an interesting thought because none of us think of our mailbox as being that valuable. But when I do get something personal, like a card or an invitation, that does, I have a happy moment. I have a good feeling.
Yeah.
So why do you think that people are just craving that? Do you think it has to do with our evolution of AI and bringing that into the world? Is it just that we're too busy? Like, what do you think it is?
I think people are fatigued from being asked for stuff and compelled, marketed to a lot of the time. And what we really preach is kind of like a full stop thank you, where you're just saying thank you. You're not, in 3 of those 4 messages we send you a year, we're not really asking for anything. So I think people love that. And they love just, the appreciation they get. So, when you go through your mail and it's junk mail, and then you get a handwritten note, you kind of save that and you put that at the back, you toss all the junk mail, you sit down, and then, or if you're, you sit down and you open up that piece, and it's refreshing to just have a thank you, because we live in this society nowadays where nobody said, everybody thinks they're a snowflake and don't say thank you. So just being able to kind of cultivate those relationships with no ask, I think, is a big deal. I really think that's what it is. I think people are so sick of getting something that says bye or, do or whatever.
I think that's 100% what people feel, because I mean, even within organizations and businesses, how many times does someone just say thank you without, oh, and we also need you to do this?
Yeah.
Right? So just that
for a friend,
absence,
right, with you.
But just that absence of, there's no expected next step. It's just a literally thank you is, I think, a really important piece. And I do think that's actually one of the reasons why it stands out and why it is as effective as it is.
Because all of those LinkedIn messages I'm getting, they're trying to get something out of me. They're not right, but they're offering me something. I'll show you this free demo, whatever. But then they want, it's this other side of it. So this truly is, which I love about it, is that it is just saying thank you and not expecting anything more. I mean, I think about, like, I get the emails from my financial planner or even my dentist, saying happy birthday or whatever that may be. But those are the morning emails that I'm clicking deleting, because it feels like, okay, I know I'm in marketing. It's a mass communication. It's running out of your database. My financial planner really didn't have much to do with that, if anything. It's just an automated process. So I think that, especially someone who you do spend money with and you are ongoing relationship, this feels so much more appreciated.
For like a luxury brand, and unfortunately it really ended over COVID. Everybody at the company we worked with left, but it was the best program we ever did. Unfortunately, it's 6 years old now. It was for a major Italian leather goods purse company. You would have heard of them, and they have stores across America, all over the world, but North America, Canada, US. After shopping at the store, you would receive a handwritten note from in quotes, the store clerk. So it would have their name at the bottom, it would have their phone number and the store they're at. And it would, just say, we hope you enjoy the mini purse, whatever it is. If you have any questions, please come in and see us. And that was it. It was just, to reinforce that relationship. And, people are always asking, what's the ROI of a thank you? And I do think there's an ROI. I think, there's a couple ways to measure it, whether that's doing an A/B holdback test. You could do that. That's probably the easiest. But Einstein said, not everything that matters can be measured, and not everything that's measurable matters, right? Like, I think everybody wants some crazy spreadsheet and they can calculate out to this, to the umpteenth decimal point, the effects of something. And that's not realistic. Sometimes it's you're playing the long game and you're trying to see over time, how valuable is this relationship? Not, a month from now, you know what I mean? Like, people will say, oh, we're going to use your service for a retail brand. We'll send people a note, and then this will be a test. And then in a month, we'll get back to you. Well, just because you sent somebody a handwritten thank you note, they're not going to turn around 1 month later and buy from you, especially if it's a high value ticket item. It might be a few months later. So you have to have that kind of longer term approach and understand that these things, they take time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think something like that, Italian goods, I mean, that I'm sure those purses were thousands of dollars. So someone is investing. So to have that treatment back just feels like I just went through a very high-end experience where I feel like I'm valued. And that's a wonderful feeling for anybody who just made such a large purchase. So that makes total sense. All right. So we're going to move into the hot seat, David, because before we let you go, we have one more activity, and that is our hot seat.
Pros and cons, come on in. Hot seat, David in the flame. Pros and cons, say the name. Hot seat, David brings the heat. Pros and cons, that's the seat. Hot seat.
I feel like that was like a bunch of children that we've hired to sing this song. It was great.
Kids love deep marketing discussions. If it's one thing I know about children, it's one-on-one marketing communication.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have some fun, David. We're going to play overhyped or worth the hype. So we're going to throw out a few common marketing tactics, and you're just going to give us gut reaction. Overhyped or worth the hype. You can say like, yes, overhyped, hyped, or you can kind of expand upon it, whatever you want to do. But a little bit of a quick game here. Okay. AI generated email personalization. Worth the hype or hyped?
I think it's worth the hype to a degree. I think there is a point where it becomes over personalized and creepy. But if you fall short, it's called the personalization paradox. If you fall short of that, I think it's kind of needed these days, especially if you tie into the back end systems, so you can provide better personalization of products or services.
Birthday emails.
Skip.
Huh?
Loyalty programs.
Worth the hype, but it has to be more than just a point program. It can't just be, because you don't want to be buying clients for points, because as soon as you stop the points, they'll disappear. So you're not really getting loyalty, you're just having a transaction.
Personalized video messages.
We talked about this. I think actually it serves a purpose as long as they're not AI generated.
Corporate swag.
To a degree, worth the hype. Man, I'm pro everything here.
Really? Corporate swag, you think worth the hype? I have to tell you.
Well, okay, you know what? I take that back. Okay. You are absolutely right. If it has a logo on it, it is marketing, not a gift. I agree with you. There's a book called Becoming Superstars or something. I forget the name of the book exactly, but she talked about that. So when we give out swag, it doesn't say handwritten on it. It tells a story, but it doesn't say handwritten. So I rescind. I agree. Not worth the hype.
Referral incentives.
I would say not worth the hype. If they want to refer you, they should refer you.
Customer appreciation events.
100% worth the hype.
The phrase customer centric.
Redundant. I think every business should be customer centric. If you're not, you shouldn't be in business.
Okay. You passed the quote unquote test. There's no test.
Wasn't that bad?
I got like 7 out of 6.5 out of 10.
I mean,
no right or wrong.
There's no right or wrong. We just like to hear people's perspective. And you survived the not so hot seat.
Well, thank you. This was really, really fun. I appreciate everybody's interest here.
Thank you.
David, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate great conversation. And I think people can learn a lot from this. I think, Laura, as we just sort of recap here, I mean, I think one of the things that was interesting, and I think we both agree, like coming into this, we had a very different perspective than when we actually sat down and had the conversation with David and understood a little bit more around sort of where we were and where this was headed. But I think a couple of things that stood out for me, I love that, people are fatigued from being asked. I think that is such a true statement when we look at overall. And I think this, handwritten as a whole, I think the concept of, using it for retaining customers and understanding when is appropriate and when isn't appropriate, but, might not be appropriate for prospecting, but definitely great for retention, I think are two things that those that are listening to this can obviously learn from and perhaps, look at ways to be able to use Handwrytten for that case.
Yeah, I think just a simple thank you is what people need and really appreciate. So this just feeds that. And I think it's a smart idea. And we don't normally really talk so much about our guests and their business, but this one was it's different, it's interesting, and it definitely so relates to our marketing audience. And I felt like it was good to dive in so people can understand exactly what David's doing and how his organization works. So people can give it a try, hopefully. So thank you everyone for listening. And most importantly, if you liked what you heard today, be sure to follow us. And if you want to hear more from David Wachs, you can find him on LinkedIn.